small step here for transformation is that I will work on my communication blind spots. And if you think this topic isn't for you, you're about to change your mind. Because I'm going to mention 10 blind spots, and I promise you, I don't guess I can promise you, I strongly believe that everyone in the room has one or more of these blind spots. I'll mention 5 that are blind spots when we're speaking. So if you do what I'm about to say, hey, that's good. But if you don't do it all the time, maybe it's a blind spot for you. So here are the 5. Do you use the golden rule? Do you speak to other people the way you'd like to have them speak to you? Number 2 is, do you control your tongue? Do you ask yourself, will this build up the other person or hurt the other person, and then decide accordingly? Number 3 is, do you go out of your way to say things that are encouraging? Number 4, do you try not to talk too much or too little? And number 5, do you watch your tone and expression? On my good day, I'm maybe 2 out of 5 out of those. So the point is, we all have, wait a minute, who's nodding in the back there? Okay. We all have blind spots. And many of us have blind spots in how we receive information. So here are 5 more. When you're listening to someone, do you stop what you're doing and pay total attention to them? Which means no phone, no TV. Do you pay total attention? And do you listen and really listen and ask follow-up questions? Number 3 is, do you avoid thinking about that next story that you desperately want to launch into? So much so that you're watching their mouth, and the moment their lips stop moving, you start talking about you. Do you avoid doing that? Number 4 is, do you give them some grace? You know, if they say some things you don't quite agree with, or even if they hurt your feelings a little bit, do you just say, I'm going to let it go. I can still connect with this person anyway. And number 5, do you avoid overreacting? So for the second step of transformation, the summary is, to improve your relationships, get right with yourself. And that means become more self-aware and work on your communication blind spots. So now in the third step of empathy, we're getting to where people normally think relationships start. But this is where we get right with others. And this concept of empathy is interesting. You know, we hear the word a lot, but a lot of people don't really think about it very much. Empathy is when we not only recognize the feelings of others, but we seek to understand them and to get into their skin and feel the way they feel. And if we went about our relationships that way, where might that lead? You know, if you're really trying to connect with someone else, could that lead to something wild and crazy like kindness or compassion or forgiveness or love or service? Yeah, it could. So thinking about this concept of empathy is very important. You know, you may have heard of something called emotional intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence means, are you aware of and you can manage yourself, and are you aware of and you can manage your relationships with other people? What you may not know is that if you compare emotional intelligence to cognitive intelligence, what normally people think of as IQ, and if you do research to say which is a better predictor of success in life and in business, the answer is emotional intelligence is a better predictor of success. The other thing that's interesting is cognitive intelligence is not one that we can change too much. Sure, we can learn more information, but our IQ sort of stays the same. Guess what? Emotional intelligence can be learned. So it's incredibly important and we can get better at it. That's pretty encouraging when you think about it. You know, it's encouraging to me because I needed it desperately. Relationships and empathy and things like that have not been my strength, you know, especially in my adult life. I came into my adult life, I think Bruce mentioned it, I was trained as an engineer. So when I had a conversation, my objective was to get from point A to point B as quickly and efficiently as possible. And if you weren't on that track and you were wandering about and sharing your feelings and talking about life, you know, I would get impatient. So I could be abrupt and critical without even really thinking about it. You know, I had all these blind spots in how I communicated. But over time, I learned, you know, from the Bible and from recovery and from other disciplines, and I learned from my wife. She was better at it naturally than I was. You know, I would see her having conversations with, you know, a grocery clerk or a friend, and where she's actually paying attention to them, and she's not getting impatient and making them the most important person in her life for a few minutes. And I said, wow, I've never thought about that. So I'm trying to get better. It's not a strength. I'm a work in progress. But I now try to go into conversations at least and say, I'm not here to impress or control the other person. And I don't need them to please or entertain me. I'm just going to have a good connection and see where that goes. And the Bible has some thoughts for us to think about. In Luke it says, do to others as you would have them do to you. They call that the golden rule. So I guess that means it's pretty valuable. And if you look around the world, that golden rule is one of the most recognized and accepted life principles there is. Its wisdom transcends all religions. Obviously, it came from a Christian background. And it aligns with what we heard of before with the second greatest commandment, right? To love your neighbor as yourself. So it sounds like it's pretty important.